Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Mindful Moments practice for this in-service day. My name is Arianne, and I am the Early Childhood Mental Health Specialist for North County. And I'm here with my colleague, Emily, who is the Early Childhood Mental Health Specialist for South County. Today, we're going to talk about mindfulness and meditation as it relates to daily practices that you can adopt for your personal life, as well as mindfulness and meditation practices for the workplace. So we're going to split this presentation up into a couple different sections. So Emily will get us started with some basic foundational knowledge of mindfulness and meditation, just so we all have a common shared language to use. I'll go into some practices for the classroom and specifically for older children, but please feel free to adopt this for any early Head Start classrooms as well. And then Emily will end us with a guided meditation. So we'll go ahead and get started.
So just to begin, I wanted to kind of give you guys the language to understand what mindfulness is. I know that's a really big buzzword right now, and it's often kind of interchangeable with meditation. And so I just wanted to provide that knowledge to you all so that we have that information moving forward. So mindfulness is really just a state of active, open attention to the present moment. So what is here and now? Mindfulness is really focused on the observation of our thoughts and feelings without judgment, without criticism, without wanting to change it. It's really just letting everything come as it is and not trying to shift it. So mindfulness really fosters a sense of acceptance with all of our emotions. And it really gives you kind of this permission in a way to allow them to arise without trying to change or shift it. And the most key components of mindfulness is really awareness and acceptance. And so it's the awareness of what is going on within your body, your mind, and accepting it as it is without trying to shift it again. So I love this graphic about what acceptance is. And I think it really just paints the picture beautifully. And I think we've all kind of been in this place, right? Like, it's raining. I don't like the rain. I wish it wasn't raining. I just did my hair. This is going to ruin my shoes. This is so frustrating. Or we can approach it with acceptance of just, it's raining. It is. Yep. So just going into more about awareness is really just our knowledge or our ability to be able to focus our attention to that inner experience or inner process of what's happening. And acceptance is the ability to just simply observe and accept our thoughts or our feelings without working to change or judge them. And that's one of my favorite quotes, actually, from one of my favorite authors, Pema Chodron. And she says, emotions are like clouds, they always move. And so I think that's a beautiful quote to keep in mind when we think about the concept of acceptance, because it's truly like clouds. The more we just see them and let them go and move like clouds, the more we can move forward and find the sunshine again. Mindfulness can be used to reduce stress, anxiety, pain, or simply help someone relax. So actually in the 1970s, Jon Kabat-Zinn started a research study with chronic pain patients. And he actually found that patients who utilized mindfulness within their regular practice experienced a decrease in that chronic pain and suffering. And it was utilized with mindfulness-based stress reduction. And so oftentimes he found that patients would try to avoid the pain, which actually resulted in a greater amount of distress. And so we can think about that as far as physical pain or even emotional pain. So does mindfulness really work? I know it's kind of a foreign concept because we just kind of sit and settle and it feels like, what could this possibly be doing? Well, it's actually doing a lot for your brain. So the graphic on the side is actually 4 of the 5 brain waves that occur within our bodies. And so I'll talk about 2 of them in the next slide a little bit. I won't go too far into that because I know that's easy to get lost in with the brain. But just a little bit of background about what mindfulness actually does for us physiologically and psychologically. There's a great deal of research indicating mindfulness really helps the brain. It is especially shown to have a positive correlation with improved memory in dementia patients, individuals who have suffered from impairment from substance abuse, and early Alzheimer's patients as well. There's evidence that mindfulness and meditation display a reduction in stress. So even when they're really brief meditations, even as simple as our mindful moments or just a sacred pause, anything minor, right, that you're doing to intentionally be mindful and in the present moment is shown to have a positive impact on stress reduction. It has also been shown to have improved immune function and improved ability to emotionally regulate. So when we're in a calmer, more relaxed state, we're better able to tune into how we're feeling, and instead of reacting, learning to respond to situations. And then just continuing with the brain science behind meditation, scientists have discovered that certain brain wave frequencies, so particularly your alpha and theta waves, will change as you utilize meditation. And so those brain waves are linked with a relief in stress and a promotion of lasting and substantial reductions in people prone to anxiety states. So if you're somebody who does struggle with anxiety, this is a really helpful tool to try out. Um, it really takes you from being stuck in the head center down into your body. And so that's where all of our emotions lie. And that's where a lot of our wisdom is down in our gut. And so if you are prone to feeling stress or prone to feeling really overwhelmed, this might be a really wonderful tool to just add in. And it doesn't have to be long. Like we said earlier, even just brief meditations will help to reduce that stress. It also facilitates a deep physical relaxation and promotes mental clarity. So if you have done conscious discipline, right, this would probably make sense with that brain graphic. We're up in the green part of our executive state. So when we're able to calm down, regulate, move through the brainstem, the emotional brain, and get to the top of your brain, you have more clarity and you're better able to problem solve as well. It also increases our verbal ability. So if you feel maybe triggered in certain conversations or certain things, this can really help with that too, because it allows you to maybe better access the words that you're trying to find and the emotions that you're actually feeling. It also helps to synchronize the two hemispheres of your brain, so your right and left brain, to get them kind of talking to each other more often. It also helps to promote recall of mental images, and it promotes spontaneous, imaginative, and creative thinking, which in early childhood you need all the time because you're always on your toes, you're always being challenged. A kid always has like another way to do it. And so this also helps to kind of keep up with how fast paced they are, really. And also a reduction in pain, and promotes euphoria to stimulate the release of endorphins. So it actually leads to a greater sense of happiness within your life. So, like I said, mindfulness is not just meditation. And just so you know, because I think I forgot to say this in the prior slide, mindfulness is really just our focused attention on the present moment with that acceptance and awareness, whereas meditation is more of that practice of sitting and meditating. So I would say meditation is a little bit more concrete as far as like the way you practice, but mindfulness can be integrated in so many ways. And you could do it walking, you can do it eating, you can do it while you wash your dishes. It's really just about that present awareness and focus on what it is you're doing. So even something simple, like I said, of doing your dishes, make that an intentional moment to be mindful. So I feel the soapy water on my hands. I feel the warmth of the water as I clean this plate off. I notice the change in the way that the plate looks from when I put it into the water to when I'm taking it out. So something as simple as that is still integrating mindfulness into your life. Some other small ways to integrate mindfulness into your life may be a sacred pause. Arianne and I actually did this right before we started this presentation. We frequently do this when we jump from meeting to meeting to kind of settle in and refocus. Where are we? What's my intention? And how do I be present? And all you need for a sacred pause is really just taking a few short, deep breaths, no more than a minute, really. And something I like to do, obviously I'm doing it right now, is putting my hands over my heart as I do that to kind of help me feel grounded and reoriented. So that's something you can do in the classroom. You can do it before mealtime. You can do it before nap time. It's so easy to integrate that one. Another one is mindful eating. So this can be really fun in the classroom. I feel like an orange is naturally the first thing that comes to my mind, but you could use any food. So with an orange, it's like as you're peeling it, noticing, do you start to smell anything? Can you start to taste anything as you peel back that orange? As you put it in your mouth, is it cold? Is it warm? How does the juice feel in your mouth? And really just focusing on every detail of that and slowing down. Another fun one to do with kids is a silly walking meditation. So I love this one. It's super goofy and it helps them to access their own bodies. So one of my favorite ones is let's walk like a noodle. And so kind of just like moving through and having them pay attention to how did your arms feel when you were a noodle? How did your feet feel when you were a noodle? And going through that too, because that's bringing them to the present moment and making them aware of their body sensations and teaching them how to move their bodies in different ways. Mindful walking during lunch breaks, or maybe when you guys are outside at playtime. I know it can be really difficult because you don't really get a lunch break if you're in the classroom. However, you do get to go outside with the kids. And so maybe that's even a time where you could do that with yourself or teaching the kids to do something like that. So as I'm walking, I notice my feet crunching the grass below me, or the ground was wet so I can hear a different noise than normal, or the wind on my face feels so cool as I'm walking, or I feel the sunshine on the top of my head. Just being really intentional about any kind of physical sensation that you have. Because again, you're connecting to the present moment and have awareness of what is happening right here, right now, versus what happened 10 minutes ago or what's going to happen in 15 minutes. Like I said earlier, putting your hand over your heart is a really good small way to integrate mindfulness. So taking 3 to 5 deep breaths can really help you to calm down. So maybe if it's just a wild day in the classroom, because it happens, right? Like there's just some days where kids come in more hyper. Maybe it was Easter weekend and they had lots and lots of candy. And so it can be dysregulating. And so maybe taking a moment to put your hand over your heart and taking those 3 to 5 deep breaths to settle in. Gratitude journals are a great one if you're not into any of these other ones. Maybe just thinking about things that you're grateful for. Maybe it's your pet at home. Maybe it's your cat that always purrs and just is ready to welcome you when you get home at the end of the day, or just whatever it may be, like that there was sunshine today and that made you feel really grateful to be alive. Another one is pausing to ask yourself, what is your intention today? And so this can really help you to be in the present moment and connect to what you want to do throughout the day. Another one is setting an intention. So it may be something like, I will be kind to myself today. I will choose to be compassionate towards myself in this moment, or I will choose to be patient and gracious with myself and others today. So, the most important part about mindfulness is really the more that we extend compassion, empathy, and kindness to ourselves, the more that organically just flows through us. So, the more you do that for yourself, and the more you put your own oxygen mask on, the more you can help others to do the same and to be that calm presence within the classroom, within your life, within your family, within the work environment. And it will just start to come very naturally the more you practice it.
Yeah, and as Emily ended that slide, I think it's really important to reiterate that once you establish your own mindfulness practice in your daily life, this is a great thing to bring to your workplace. So, for the purpose of this presentation, I'll be mainly focused on how to bring it to a classroom, but get creative and think of ways that if you work in a kitchen or maybe you are in an administrative role, what are some things that Emily just listed or that we might go over in the latter half of this presentation that you feel comfortable and confident implementing into your daily routine? So if you're anything like most people, you probably find it helpful to know why and how these things are important and beneficial working in particularly an early education and intervention setting. So it's no secret that teachers' work lives are just saturated with interactions with students, with colleagues, administrators, parents. And this requires constant shifts of attention from maybe an individual child's needs, be that, education or emotional needs, to the larger group, doing group care, and then back again. So problem solving has to happen on the fly. And truthfully, self-regulation is a must to be able to survive these intense moments. And teachers oftentimes don't have the opportunity to leave the classroom to compose themselves after distressing interaction. So being able to access these mindfulness skills in the moment is a great way to care for yourself during those types of situations. So another reason that this is a really great practice to implement working with young children is because research has shown that children's scores of security with their childcare teachers in toddlerhood were the most important predictor of the quality of their relationship with a teacher in their elementary grades. The relationship between a child and their teacher during early childhood sets the stage for the learning that follows. So mindfulness training for teachers seeks to improve the teacher's well-being so that the relationship between the teacher and the child can improve and flourish. So just some information about how mindfulness skills are helpful. They've been shown to enhance the social and emotional development of children by supporting and nurturing their self-awareness, their self-management or self-regulation, their social awareness, so building those important social skills, and their relationship skills, and of course, responsible decision making. So knowing how to care for yourself and how to regulate yourself and attend to your own needs can help to make very conscientious decisions and problem solving skills. So to build on this concept a little bit more, the skills that are associated with mindfulness can serve as a buffer against stress, and they can bolster our resilience. So mindfulness allows us to grow our empathy and our perspective taking skills, which are essential when working with the children and families that have the psychosocial and environmental stressors that many Head Start families experience. So by working mindfulness skills into our daily practice, we can work to prevent our own burnout or vicarious trauma. And then, of course, young children learn best through co-regulation. So in order to co-regulate, the adult must be regulated, calm, and composed. But this can be very difficult when managing challenging behaviors, tantrums, or other signs of dysregulation. So accessing mindfulness skills intentionally and conscientiously in these moments can prevent escalating behaviors, and it can put us in a position to be able to help the child with their own regulation. So as Emily said earlier, we must put our own oxygen mask on first. Regulation has to start with us, and mindfulness is a great way to get that regulation and to feel grounded, to be able to handle these big situations. Great. And then, so one way to start this practice is that this concept of a window of tolerance. So if you've watched our Mindful Moments skills video where we introduce this concept, you may already be familiar with this phrase. But if not, it's this idea that we naturally have a threshold for an amount of stress that we can tolerate in any given day, moment, etc. And certain things can narrow this window. So things like spilling a cup of coffee on one day might be really tolerable. You just get a paper towel, clean it up, move on with your day. Whereas other days, if that window has been narrowed, spilling a cup of coffee can just set the tone for the rest of the day, and it can become, one of those days that just unravels. So becoming aware of your window of tolerance is a great place to start. Noticing when you start to feel dysregulated. How do you notice that? Is it through your heart rate, your breathing? Do you carry tension somewhere in your body when you start to leave that window? Maybe you withdraw. Maybe you don't seek out support from others when normally that's something that you would do. You'd want to share information with others, share news with them. So you can leave your window by becoming extremely dysregulated to the point where you feel heightened, or you can leave your window of tolerance to where you feel really low, so maybe a low mood or something like that, but you just don't feel like you're quite where you normally would be. So start to take notice of when you leave that window, be it out and up or down and out. And you can do that through journaling or just simply noticing without judgment. And a really good way to do that is to just sit with how you're feeling non-judgmentally. So with curiosity, what was at the core of your emotional experience? A great aid to use to be able to kind of sit and identify those core experiences is with a feelings wheel. And, just kind of pick a few of those emotions that you either felt that you were having, or maybe that you're curious about, and just explore them. Sit with them, notice what wave was coming over you at the time, and sit and identify why that might be. And then recognize and understand that we certainly all have triggers and buttons, and how those show up in our interactions. So those triggers and buttons can be rooted in our past experiences, maybe our values or our boundaries. But just remember to reflect and pause and notice what was really going on with me. Was maybe a boundary that I have not enforced becoming present and making itself known. Maybe it was a past experience that I had that is now showing up in this interaction, and the other person may have no knowledge of that. And then, of course, all of this is aimed at enhancing our self awareness. And enhancing our self awareness is truly a self care practice. Your longest and most meaningful relationship is with yourself. So it's worth the investment to take the time to get to know yourself, enhance your self awareness, enhance your emotional capacity, your emotional awareness of what goes on during certain situations. Taking the time to pause and reflect is really a great place to start to do this. And here are some additional ideas that you can use to start your practice. Emily had some great ones earlier that maybe you want to try a few. Here's some other ways that you can just begin having mindful moments. So one is just by accepting yourself as an imperfect human being. A lot of us might have perfectionistic tendencies, and that can really get in the way with our happiness and our feelings of accomplishment and achievement. So just being able to accept that we are all imperfect beings is a really great way to practice some self-compassion. Believe that you have value and that you are making a contribution to the mission. We're all in mission-oriented work here, and no matter what role you're serving, you're working towards that mission in a very important and intentional way. So remind yourself that you have value and that you are making a contribution towards this mission. And even outside of work, there are probably multitudes of things that you contribute to in your daily life. Maybe that's your family, maybe that's your community. Whatever it is, remind yourself that you have value and you are bringing value to whatever that mission is. And accept responsibility for yourself and your behavior. We're all imperfect. Mistakes and ruptures in relationships will happen, and that's okay. That's natural. That's human. We're not robots. We can't predict the future. So those things just happen. But if we focus on taking responsibility and working through the repair, those relationships and those mistakes can be amended. And of course, nurturing our physical body is really important. So getting whatever exercise you can and what you're capable of and feels good for you is an excellent way to nurture your physical self. Eating nutritious foods and making sure that you are getting the proper nutrition that your body needs. And of course, this one is so important, especially right now when we're probably all feeling a little bit stretched thin and just kind of maxed out. Getting enough rest. And whatever that is, rest doesn't always equate to sleep. Sometimes that's just indulging in whatever feels good for you. So maybe that's reading, or maybe that's just taking the time to nurture yourself in a way that makes you feel rested and whole. So look for ways that you can rest and recover yourself. Avoid using any unhealthy coping tools. So for some of us, that's binge watching TV, maybe it's binge eating, whatever it is. Recognize if it is unhealthy or if it's not serving you well, and then identify why it is that you might be tuning into that. I know, like binge watching TV, you can kind of like shut your brain off and just kind of coast. But that's not always the healthiest thing to do. And sometimes it might not be solving the problem at all. And it may not be, if it's avoidance, it's not necessarily coping. So recognize when you might be engaging in that and identify some other alternative ways to cope. Cultivate a hopeful attitude. So if that's saying encouraging things to yourself or just believing that things will go right and go well, instead of saying that they will go wrong, try it on for size and see how it works for you. But having a hopeful attitude can change the way that we see situations and the way that we approach interactions. And similar to that is developing effective communication skills. So mindfulness is a great way to do this, because if we pause, we can listen to hear versus listen to respond. And we can take into consideration what might be going on deep down if we have a strong reaction to something. So understanding how we like to receive information and how we are used to communicating and how whoever we're communicating with or that we may need to communicate with, how they like to receive information, how they may be used to communicating, can be really helpful to kind of bridge that gap and come together. And of course, fostering a sense of humor is a really easy and important way to reduce stress levels. This is a great way to reduce activating that stress response system, which releases cortisol, which can lead to a whole host of health issues. So being able to keep a sense of humor is a really great way to just care for yourself and keep yourself emotionally protected, and to not necessarily see the negative side of things and activate that stress response system. And then seeking out and maintaining at least one close and supportive relationship can be a really great way to feel connected. So this is a person who maybe you feel that you can trust and that you're safe to disclose these emotional experiences with, and to process these things with, these things that happen in our day-to-day lives. Having that safe haven, though, can be a really important way to feel grounded and connected. And if you want to adapt any of these practices to your classroom, a really great way to do so is to incorporate a breathing exercise, maybe after returning from the playground. There's a YouTube channel called Cosmic Kids that does a lot of meditation and yoga for young children. They're really silly and fun, so these could be a really cool thing to do to use during like getting ready for rest time, or even coming in from the playground, to just help to get them back into the children back into their window of tolerance, because even going outside can be dysregulating. It's a really exciting time and it's really fun outside, and then having to adjust back to the classroom has different expectations and demands. So being able to integrate this regulating process can be a really great way to get children to tune into how they're feeling and where they're at physically and mentally. And then take advantage of opportunities for co-regulation. So one great way to do this is using conscious discipline techniques. So things like I love you rituals or the breathing techniques. Being able to do that together amplifies the experience because of that connection. And then always use observation rather than judgment. Simply notice what is happening. Notice when children might be leaving their window of tolerance, and being able to make note of that. Hey, I noticed that when you were waiting on this for the slide and you had to wait for a little while, you seemed to get really, really antsy. I saw you might have pushed someone, or you started to get loud. And I noticed that you had a hard time waiting. So just use some observation, simply label what you saw. And you can also build opportunities for your own mindfulness practice into your workday. And so just to reiterate a couple of things that Emily suggested, taking a few minutes while outside to take a mindful walk. I love how you were mentioning, noticing how the grass felt under your feet, or if there was wind, how that feels on your face. Just making notice of all of those simple things that we probably just tune out during the day because they're so normal, or we're so used to them, or we're having to focus our attention on 100 different things. This is a great way to just be present. Use mindful eating strategies at lunch. This is a great one to use with the kids too, so you can incorporate a 2-for-1 here. If there's a particular food, noticing the texture, the color. How does it feel when you take a bite of it? What does it taste like if you let it just sit in your mouth? We eat so quickly sometimes, especially when we don't have a lot of time. And so being able to mindfully eat is a great way to, again, ground us and bring us back to that present moment. And then practicing a short meditation, or maybe that sacred pause to transition into or out of the school day. These days can be really stressful. They can be stressful to come into, and they can be stressful to leave. So giving yourself an opportunity to center yourself, ground yourself, notice how you're feeling is really critical to maintaining your wellness and keeping things moving on the right track. Right. And so here's an idea for what you can use in your classroom. If you work with pre-K, this was actually adapted from the Mind Up curriculum, which is made for pre-K. If you work in early Head Start, I'm sure that there's ideas that you can take from this and incorporate into your own classroom. And if you're not in a classroom, maybe this is something that you want to try for yourself. It's a simple mindfulness exercise that's referred to as the core practice. And its purpose is to cue our minds to relax and focus. And it helps children to quiet their minds, get ready to learn, make an intentional state of learning. So getting back into that executive state, like if we're looking at the conscious discipline brain. And it's best when used at various points throughout the day. So and if you're in a classroom, maybe this is circle time or certain transitions. So how you might do this is that you would choose a tone or a sound. So maybe you have a chime, or maybe if you have a tablet or a CD player in your classroom, you can get a tone that you can play. And you want to introduce that sound to the children and say, what do you notice about, first you want to introduce it by saying, I will use this sound to begin and end the exercise. So let them know what's coming. We'll do this exercise together every day, or if you're doing it during a certain time of the day, we'll do this every morning at circle time. Let's practice listening to the sound as well as we can for as long as it lasts. So, allow children to get comfortable, you yourself get comfortable. If that's sitting, standing, laying down, whatever you are comfortable doing or you can do in your classroom. And you can either close your eyes or take a soft gaze, but encourage the children to listen close. And you can ask the following reflection questions. So, was it hard to keep listening? How did you stay focused? Were you relaxed? Are your hands still? And then you can prepare them for combining this mindful listening with mindful breathing. So you can say something like, to start our practice, we're going to sit comfortably and we're going to close our eyes or look down at our hands. And when you hear this instrument, listen as long and as carefully as you can. When the sound has faded completely, begin to focus on your breathing. When you hear the sound again, listen as long and as carefully as you can and keep breathing calmly. When you can't hear the sound any longer, slowly open your eyes and remain still and quiet. And ideally, you'd be doing this practice with them to model it and to co-regulate with them. So then some additional reflection questions that you can use for yourself or you can ask your children are, what do you think was happening in your brain during our core practice? You might get some silly answers like it was calming down or it was humming along to the sound. Let them be curious, let them wonder. There isn't necessarily a right answer that we're looking for. We just want them to be curious non-judgmentally. And then you can say something like, we'll do the core practice together 3 times every day. So when you come into the class or, circle time, transition to the playground, transition from the playground, something like that. And then remind children if they're able to use any self-regulation skills at their developmental stage and age. Remind them that they can do it on their own. If you have a chime, they can use the chime. And this is a great way for them to build self-regulation skills in a mindful way. And you can also incorporate some conscious discipline breathing exercises into this as well. So if your children are familiar with conscious discipline and that's something you're comfortable with, you can have them match the tone up with like the pretzel or drain or anything like that, and incorporating conscious discipline into the practice. A couple other additional ideas are sensory exercises. So again, listening, but also movement and tasting are really great ways to engage the sensory experience into our mindfulness practice, which is really engaging for kids. So mindful tasting, you can have them take a piece of fruit or whatever you have available to you and just let it sit on their tongue, and then ask them to really focus in on how does it taste? How does it feel in your mouth? Things like that. And then expressing gratitude and acts of kindness. So this is another way that we can incorporate conscious discipline into the mindfulness practice in a classroom. So the wish well board is a really great way to enhance that connectedness. A care box is another way. So filling a box in the classroom with items that provide some sort of comfort. So maybe that's a stress ball or Theraputty, and maybe it's even Band-Aids, like that really symbolize care. And if a child is feeling hurt or sad or, is actually hurt and needs a Band-Aid, we can provide them comfort, and we can teach other children that they can provide comfort as well. And then assigning meaningful jobs to the classroom. So maybe this is a greeter. So anytime a visitor comes to the classroom, in the future, when visitors come to the classroom, that is, a child can take notice and wish them a warm welcome to the classroom. But anything that enhances that feeling of ownership over the classroom and an enhanced feeling of connection to the school family is a great way to increase this feeling of being supported and feeling connected.
So now what we're going to do is we are actually going to end the recorded portion of this. And what we are going to do is it's not over. We're going to do an actual mindfulness practice. And so I am going to guide you through that and cover the basics when we go through the live portion. I know it's really hard when you're sitting on your computer, sitting at home, whatever, and everything's all recorded. So we wanted to integrate a little bit of both parts. So I'm now going to end it and then switch into that. So thank you, Arianne, for all your help in this. And I'm glad we were able to have you here because I know you will be out of town when we actually present this live. So this was the best of both worlds.
Yes, thank you guys for your attention. And I hope that this was helpful. And I hope you enjoy the live meditation as well.
Yeah. Okay, just give me 1 second.